Well, welcome to Managerial Accounting, the virtual variety. It's a snowstorm outside, and the class has been canceled, but the show must go on. So I'm going to do the first half of this chapter 3. We'll just do it virtually. I was teaching two classes of intermediate accounting, intermediate 1 and intermediate 2, when the pandemic hit, and halfway through the semester, the class went from a traditional class to a virtual class. So these things happen. So let's get started with chapter 3. And I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint deck here. And let's see, like hopefully you'll see this on the screen. Share screen. And there we go. So we'll make that a bigger view. And then we would get there eventually. Okay, so chapter 3 has to do with process costing. And up to this point, chapter 1, chapter 2, we've been primarily doing job order costing. So now we're moving into process costing. And we know from our previous discussion that process costing involves accounting for the manufacturing costs of when an organization, the products they make come as a result of a process where we don't actually, and the product that we produce is very homogeneous, where you can't really distinguish one batch from another batch. So we're going to describe process costing in this chapter. We're going to prepare a cost of production report. And this is going to be pretty tricky, this cost of production report. And that is how we actually track materials, labor, and overhead to individual departments, as opposed to job order cost sheets like we did in chapter 2. We're going to journalize entries for transactions using process costing. We're going to illustrate the analysis of unit cost changes between periods, and we're going to illustrate the cost of production report and evaluate a company's overall performance. We're going to skip objective 6. I hope you don't feel cheated, but we're not going to go through the weighted average method of preparing a cost of production report. So objective 6, which is in the appendix, you can consider your appendix having been removed. So these little mini lectures I'm going to do as a result of the snowstorm, I'm going to take you through objective 1 and objective 2. So let's start with objective number 1 in describing process costing. So we know process costing when a manufacturer produces a product that is indistinguishable from indistinguishable from the other, and comes out of a continuous production process, as opposed to job order costing when we do individual batches and we can trace the cost directly to the products. So process costing is used by process manufacturing. And we go through a process as opposed to individual jobs. So with job order costing, we record the cost for each job using the job sheets. You'll see in process costing, we're going to be accumulating the costs in various processes and not through individual jobs. So in terms of companies that use process manufacturing, so again, the products, they come out of a process. One product is not distinguishable from another. So if we're making Pepsi Cola, if we're making aluminum, if we're making computer chips, if we're making iPhones, if we're making chocolate bars, we go through a process. Out of that process comes a large number of products that are all the same. This is in contrast to a job order costing that you'd use at Disney's for making movies, a moving company, golf courses, mobile homes, advertising. They all would use job order costing. So there are some similarities between the two. So in process and job order costing, we're going to be recording and summarizing product costs. We're going to have costs of material, labor, and overhead in both process and job order costing. We're going to be allocating factory overhead. We're going to be using a perpetual inventory system. We're going to have work in process. We're going to have finished goods. We're going to have raw materials. And we're going to provide product information that's going to be useful for decision making. But there are significant differences between the two, which will become more apparent as we get into this chapter. So we've already been through, for job order costing, we've been through Legend Guitars. Now we're going to introduce a company that manufactures ice cream called Frozen Delight. Frozen Delight. So here is by way of a picture. Every picture tells a story. Picture speaks with 1,000 words. So On the bottom there, you see the job order costing where we had work in process accounts and we had individual jobs. So job 71, job 72, job 73, where we accumulated material, labor, and overhead. For process costing, we are going to have work in process accounts that are reflective of different processes which the product has to go through before it is ready for finished goods. So in the case of a company that sells ice cream, you're going to have the mixing department, which gets the cream and the milk and blends them all together. And then the work in process from the mixing department is going to go to the packaging department where they're put in containers, and then they're shipped out as homogeneous containers of ice cream. So there in picture form is the difference between job order costing, individual unique jobs, and process costing, where we've got the processes that homogeneous product goes through. So we're going to record the cost of frozen delight, making the ice cream. We're going to use work in process. And we're going to have work in process for mixing and packaging. So the work in process that we accumulate for mixing, when it's ready to be transferred out, is going to be transferred to the packaging department. And we're going to have raw material. We're going to have direct materials such as milk and sugar and cartons. We're going to have direct labor, and we're going to have factory overhead, just like we had in job order costing. But we're going to be tracing these, we're going to be transferring these costs not to individual jobs, but to individual processes that will eventually make their way to the finished goods inventory. So here's the physical flow. The materials go into the mixing department. Stuff is mixed. It's shipped off to the packaging department, and it ends up in finished goods inventory. So here's a rather tedious little flow chart. I know some of you like flow charts. And you can see the individual transactions here. So you can see that materials cost are purchased. When materials is purchased, they go to the materials account. When they're used, when they're transferred out of materials, they go to work in process for the mixing department. And we have indirect materials that become part of factory overhead. So costs are accumulated in the mixing department, and then when the goods are ready to be transferred to the processing department, they're transferred to the processing department. And when they're ready to then go into finished goods, they go out of the packaging department to the finished goods, and then they go from finished goods to. So let's stop here now, take a little pause, and we'll do exercise 1 on page 124. So pause the tape, and let's go to this particular exercise. And what we need to do in this exercise is to, based on what we've just learned, make a decision about whether this is a job order costing or process would be the most appropriate. So pause the tape here. This is on page 124. So pause, and then let's take a look at these. Right? Take a couple of minutes to go through each of these. And the question is it job order costing or is it process? So take your pause, and we will resume. So each mouth, so again, you've taken a pause now, tried it on your own, and then come on back. So welcome back. So you would take each of these individually. Every mouth is different. So I called my dentist the other day, and I told them that I had a problem with two front lower teeth, and they immediately wanted to know what number teeth they are. They said I didn't have them memorized. So dentist would be an example of a job order costing, because again, each mouth is unique. Gasoline refining, that would be a classic process costing. Flour mill would also be classic process. You know, one package of flour looks just like the next. Movie studio, well, each movie is separate and distinct, so that would be job order costing. Paper manufacturing would be process. And here, custom, not just printing, but custom printing. So all of those would be, custom printing would be job order. The key word there is custom printing. So that let's pause here. That concludes the little mini lecture 1 for this chapter, and come on back for mini lecture 2. And by the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. We're assuming that you have read the chapter, at least half the chapter before watching these little videos and attempting the homework. See you shortly. Come on back for part 2.